It seems fitting that an album whose central theme is the distinction between religion and God was recorded entirely in a converted church. The church made up one of two studios at the newly opened Island Records in Basing Street, London. Island Record had two bands recording there in 1970, Led Zeppelin, who were working on their untitled fourth album, and Jethro Tull, who were recording the album that would bring them mainstream commercial success upon its release in 1971, Aqualung. Aqualung hit number 4 on the UK album charts in 1971 and number 52 on the chart in 1996 when the CD version was released. It hit number 7 on the Billboard Music Charts North American Pop Albums chart, and their single, Hymn 43, hit number 91 on the charts in 1971. A different, more popular single from the album did not gain any traction upon its initial release. It wasn't until 1976, when the single was re-released, that it would hit number 59 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 85 on the Canadian charts. Since then, the song has gone on to be critically acclaimed by everyone from Jethro Tull frontman Ian Anderson to Billboard, Ultimate Classic Rock, and Das Gesamtwerk der großen Rockacts in Czech. The alleged meaning of the song has changed over the years, with Anderson initially claiming it to be about dying, and later calling it a song about overpopulation. While the meaning has shifted, the song's main appeal has stayed the same: the simple, hard rock riff and the steady, train-like rhythm. That's right, we're talking Jethro Tull's Locomotive Breath on Cover Me.
In the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser, headlong and true.
That's right, it's Cover Me, the only podcast that talks about famous songs and their many cover versions, compares them against one another to find out which one is running headlong to its death. I'm your host as always, Jake Cressy, joined by my all-time winner co-host,
Alex Mildenberger.
Alex
Yes.
Mildenberger.
Yeah,
How you doing?
I'm good. Winning.
Yeah,
apparently.
all time. I could have gone with all-time loser. That just felt mean.
Yeah, you could have also said like his wife's cheating on him. Alex Mildenberger.
Yeah,
But,
Alex Mildenberger.
that would be the most absurd of all, because I am
That
not
would
married.
be. Yeah. So unless you consider, like, if you have a future wife and you consider them having sex with other people before marrying you to be cheating, like if you're weird like that, maybe that
If
would
I'm
apply, but
one of those guys,
you're like, yeah, a little too possessive.
pre-possessive.
Pre-possessive preposition. Yeah, Alex, you're doing good. The weather's fine.
Yeah,
That was it. We did it. It was a home run, Alex.
yeah, that was great.
Except talking about the intro here for the listeners who are unclear
Oh,
as to
yeah.
what we're talking about.
Yeah, you probably wouldn't know because I'm assuming you usually edit those together. So
Mhm.
it doesn't seem like you fuck up at least once, let's say. But that was good.
That's good. Except I think I said Island Record on the second time around and not Island Records. But I skipped over it
You
because
kind of like play that off. Play that off.
played
It's
off. Yeah.
like,
It's
oh, you just heard it wrong, bro. I totally did.
and
it
of
right.
course, the German publication des Gesamtwerk der großen Rockacts in Czech probably is incorrect.
Yeah, it's close enough. I mean,
it's got
I
one of those
it was
fancy
a lot of
B's
syllables
in it. Yeah.
Oh, I think that's like an SH sound. I think.
Okay, and it's preceded by an O with the umlaut.
What is the letter before that O?
R.
Okay.
Before that, G.
Okay. I think it because if you have two vowels in a row, and the second one has the dots, I don't think it's the same as if it's on its own. But that might not apply to every language.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what an O solo is with the umlaut?
No, I don't remember how it affects the sound.
Okay, so this might be similar to more like der Größten than der Grobten.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds more German anyway.
Yeah, sounds more German to me. Anyway, sorry, German people, for the intro. Not here to talk about Germany, although we're here to talk about Jethro Tull, not the agriculturist, but the band.
The band.
Much more well known, right? I don't think Jethro Tull's a big historical figure.
I mean, I feel like as much as Jethro Tull has a profile in like rock and roll circles, and as popular as they were at times, certainly it's not a group I like I haven't like met a lot of Jethro Tull fans in my life compared to like people who know about Led Zeppelin, for example.
Right,
know,
and people who know about seed drills.
Yeah, exactly. People who are affected by the seed drill.
That's fair. Yeah, Jethro Tull, despite the fact that they did have commercial success, feels like a fringe band to me.
It definitely feels like it. I don't know how valid that is, but it definitely has the feel. So like discovering them in high school is like is a pretty good feeling because you're like, oh, this is something a little different. They're also a little
Yeah.
different, I think. They
I would agree with
approach
that.
things in an interesting way that I certainly haven't seen in other like popular rock and roll groups.
Primarily bringing the flute to the action.
Mostly the flute. The flute's the big one.
That's a big one.
And then later on, not so much on Aqualung, but some of their later 70s albums, there's more like a folk influence. And that's interesting. You can put it on and like it's not English folk music, but you kind of feel like it almost is, especially if you live in the prairies in Canada.
Right, yeah, where you're like, oh, it's got a flute there. It must be English
flute? Oh, is
folk
that a
music.
small guitar making it sound diminutive? Interesting. Wow.
Very interesting. Yeah, this was a high school discovery for me, Rock Band 2, and then I think you probably were like, hey, check out the full album, Aqualung.
Right, I had the
rather than
CD
just
because
the
my
song.
dad bought it, and like for years I was like, this is weird and I don't want to listen to it. And then I think Rock Band inspired me to go back to it, which was a good decision. Really like Jethro Tull now.
Yeah, and it is a fucking ugly album cover because it's got this creepy little man on it.
That's true. It's just like I mean it's Aqualung who's like a homeless guy, like hunched over in a big coat, and everything is like brown and stuff. You know, it's it's a lot.
Yeah, you
for
got
a
the old
young
English
person.
lettering by it. That cover art is by Burton Silverman. Of course, now I look at it, I'm like, oh fuck yeah, this album
Yeah,
cover's
that's
dope.
Aqualung.
But yeah, at the time, no, not keen on it. Now, Alex, you saw Ian Anderson live,
I saw Jethro Tull.
right?
Yeah, 10 years ago, the night before my math diploma, which is for anyone not familiar with this specific form of testing, it was my grade 12, which for anyone not familiar, that's the last year of high school, and the diploma is like your final exam that the province sets up. That's like provincial level examinations, and was tired for my math diploma because I saw Jethro Tull's Aqualung 40th anniversary concert the night before.
Okay, so they must have played Locomotive Breath.
Oh yeah, they played the whole album.
Yeah, they just played front to back.
No, it was kind of scattered throughout, and then Aqualung was actually like the song was the encore, which I don't think was a good idea, but I enjoyed the concert anyway.
Fair enough. Reading up on Locomotive Breath this week, I think it mentions on the Wikipedia page that Locomotive Breath is often the encore song.
It's a really like energizing song. It's a good, especially if you like go off and then you can like just like everyone's off stage and then just the guy playing piano comes back on, right? And then he does his thing and everyone's like, I know what's going on. And then, you know, the spotlight goes on the piano, he starts to play and everyone's like, oh shit, you cheer. And then everyone starts to kind of come out and then you just kind of crash into the main part of the song. And that's pretty exciting.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry that you weren't given the encore treatment you deserved, Alex. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, I think there was more encore stuff going on. I don't remember. It was 10 years ago.
10 years ago, Alex.
As I said, for the 40th anniversary. Of course, that means this year is the 50th anniversary of the album. So that's a long time.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason we're talking about it today is that it is the 50th anniversary, and that's the kind of people we are. Love this song. It was always a standout on the album for me. Let's talk about some lyrics here, Alex, because there's stuff to discuss.
Yep, there is. If I can find them.
Yeah, a lot of people on this one. This is another one of those ones where everybody's got their own interpretation, and most of them are wrong.
Or like,
Uh,
what happens a lot, and what we will see is people be like, "This probably means this," and you're like, "But why? That doesn't make any sense." Like, it's a very like surface level interpretation. But let's look into it.
let's look into this. So we start off with verse 1, which says, "In the shuffling madness." Actually, should I start out with some quotes from Ian Anderson about what he said about the song first? Let's get into that.
Yeah,
first.
yeah, sure.
Okay. So this is from a February. Actually, can I find the earlier one first? Let me see here. So this is from Disc and Music Echo, which I believe is a magazine published on March 20th, 1971. Here, Ian Anderson says, "Locomotive Breath is another song about dying, but it's not so serious as Slipstream. It's an analogy of the unending train journey of life. You can't stop, you've got to stagger on, but it's not that serious. All of the songs have an element of humor, and sometimes pure silliness." So that was the initial story, given that it's about just how life is an unending train journey that you can't really get off of.
It's pretty dry humor.
Yeah, you gotta just kind of gotta slog through it. Coming to 2013, he talks about the song again, and he says, "It was my first song that was perhaps on a topic that would be a little more appropriate to today's world. It was about the runaway train of population growth and capitalism. It was based on those sort of unstoppable ideas. We're on this crazy train. We can't get off it. Where is it going? Bearing in mind, of course, when I was born in 1947, the population of planet Earth was slightly less than a third of what it is today. So it should be a sobering thought that in one man's lifetime, our planetary population has more than tripled. You'd think population growth would have brought prosperity, happiness, food, and a reasonable spread of wealth, but quite the opposite has happened, and is happening even more to this day. Without putting in too much little detail, that was what lay behind that song." So there's your two official interpretations from the same guy.
Yeah, I think. Well, there's another quote where he says when he wrote it, it was originally meant to be about population growth. That's kind of what he was thinking of.
Yeah.
And then it sort of evolved over the course of him writing it into less of a specific thing. Which is something we talked about before. We've talked about, taking this concept that you have and trying to make it into a relatable song, trying to make your specific things into a universal thing, I guess.
Right. So that quote you have is here. He says, "When I wrote it, I wasn't deliberately setting out to write a piece of music on a particular subject, but it evolved during the writing process into being not terribly specific, but about the issue of overcrowding, the rather claustrophobic feeling of a lot of people in a limited space, and the idea of the incessant, unstoppable locomotive being metaphor for seemingly the unstoppable population expansion on planet Earth."
Yeah, maybe I read that a little wrong.
Yeah, well, he says it a little dumb because he says it evolved, but not terribly specific, which seem to contradict each other. So he started out with nothing, and then he seems to think it is loosely about overpopulation rather than being quite specific or on the head. With a writer like Ian Anderson, his idea of what is too literal might be not the same as a normal person, I would argue.
Yeah, and I mean, just looking at the lyrics, I don't think there's specifically much mention of the idea of overpopulation. Like, that doesn't really come up much, if at all.
I think I feel like there is an interpretation of it as much as there is the interpretation of it just being an analogy for life.
Right. I think the general analogy of like feeling like you can't stop this forward motion of time and like feeling like everything is building to a catastrophe potentially, or like it could at any moment, but not being able to do anything about it, is like generally applicable enough that like that's pretty solid theme that the song addresses.
Yeah, I think on a base level. And of course it mentions God in it, which is where a lot of people get crazy and where a lot of the interpretation seems to get out of hand.
Yeah.
Also even with the phrase "Old Charlie," but with all these things in mind, let's get into the lyrics officially here.
Let's.
Verse 1, "In the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath, runs the all-time loser, headlong to his death. He feels the piston scraping, steam breaking on his brow. Old Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No way to slow down." That's the refrain, but I'm gonna chuck it in there. Shuffling madness, Alex. What does that mean?
Great line. Great line.
Mhm.
Shuffling madness. Now, in terms of what it actually means, I kind of always thought of it as part of like the train metaphor, like the shuffling sound of
Yeah.
the train engine and the you know. I I think that could be interpreted as a shuffle. Um
I agree because my mind came to that conclusion as
yeah.
well.
And other than that, I think it's just like kind of sounds cool. Like he's in the shuffling mad, like the locomotive breath, that's like steam, right? That's the
Yeah.
like the cloud coming out of the top of the engine. That's what I mean, what else would it be, right?
What else could it be? That's the breath of the locomotive.
So that's kind of like you're literally kind of in this cloud. So it's kind of just setting up the image, I think, but also part of the theme of lack of control, like your vision is actually obstructed, kind of
Yeah,
by
your
this.
vision's obstructed. There is madness that is moving. It's not just still, it's shuffling.
Right.
And it is the madness of motion, right? Here we have our first, if you're looking at the Genius page, our first, I think, wrong interpretation of this, which is, he says a reference to a tranquilizer Thorazine. Some people seem to think this song is about drug addiction. I don't think that lands, really.
That's a lot. I mean, Ian Anderson isn't really known for his drug use.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't think Jethro Tull was. They weren't like a big drugs band.
Yeah.
I know a lot of bands are, but I mean, usually at this point, someone says, "Yeah, we used to do a lot of heroin back in the day, but we're clean now." But like that,
Yeah, usually
that's
it
not
comes
something
out,
I've ever
right?
read about Jethro Tull. They're like, "Yeah, we sometimes like drink some beers after the show."
Yeah, pretty
So
tame
yeah,
stuff. So yeah, it doesn't seem, and I just doesn't seem to attach to anything else. I think you're right. It's setting up this idea of a sort of, for lack of a better, a crazy train, right? It's
yes, they're going off the rails on a crazy train.
on a crazy train. So we're introduced to the character of the all-time loser, who's a dude that sucks, I guess. No, I think it's just like, I think it is maybe the modern man, or what was modern in 1971, being born into this crazy train and just, not winning ever. You just get
Right,
kicked
and I
around
think
until you.
I think a lot of the whole album has that theme, or a lot of the songs have that theme in it, where it's like you're a person and you're just in the world and you have to live with what is there already because it's so well established, and now you're kind of becoming, moving on with your life. Maybe it was an album that was created when these guys were like in their early 20s, so they're sort of in this coming of age period,
Mm-hmm.
and coming into possession of a world that is in a particular state, and you just kind of have to live with what you have and deal with that in some way.
Yeah, you really are just dealing with circumstances. Interestingly, the loser runs headlong to his death. We might think of running as, being to escape something, but he is, whether intentionally or just by happenstance, he's beelining it towards death.
Yeah, I'd never really thought of the song as being about like a catastrophic event where he dies or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Just this is life. This is a train that represents life. So of course death is at the end because
Yeah.
that's what it is. It's 80 years from now or whatever. 60 years from now. But that is the ultimate, the inevitable conclusion.
Yeah, I think he is just talking about an inevitability, and it is sort of regardless of what this all-time loser is doing, he is running towards death, and quite quickly, because we as human beings don't live that long.
Yeah. But of course, saying it like
mhm.
that makes it sound very intense. It's a very
Yeah,
intense sounding song. Like just talking about running headlong into death and then feels a piston scraping. Like that's some like really kind of gritty, intense imagery.
and steam breaking on his brow. This is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There's nothing pleasant about the locomotive breath so far. Like,
Yeah, like and steam is hot. So like
Mhm.
there's kind of the combination of like I think steam breaking. I couldn't really find a definition for that term, but it just sounds to me like it's forming water droplets.
Yeah, like it would
So,
be hitting him.
yeah,
and
and then
sort of
kind of like
breaking on his
beating
brow.
up, which also
Yeah.
sort of is goes hand in hand one, it's hot because of the steam. There's this liquid forming, but also he's probably like sweating, which kind of suggests like nervousness or concentration, you know?
Yeah,
So
or
like it's really
like exhaustion of some kind.
yeah. So it's
Plenty of
not
reasons to
easy what's
sweat.
going on.
No, and again with the piston scraping, you can kind of hear that noise too. It's not a pleasant noise.
Yeah, it's not like a well-oiled machine. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
it needs maintenance. It's
Yeah.
because it's making some weird sounds, but you don't necessarily know what's going on, and you can't stop
Yeah.
it to repair it. To
Exactly.
like
That's
oil
what
up
we
to oil up the pistons or whatever
we
you do with
learned.
the
So
pistons.
old Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop slowing, no way to slow down. The obviously the last two lines there, pretty simple.
Yeah.
Who the fuck is old Charlie?
Who is old Charlie? Some of the comments suggest it's Charles Darwin,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know what that would mean if it was.
Yeah, they mentioned because he's sort of the father of the theory of evolution.
I guess
Um,
as like an icon of like kind of being opposed to the ideas of the church, which would have been a big part of their lives, like the Church of
right.
England. Perhaps, but like some of the things they say, like he like is the cause of overpopulation. Like, what does that even mean?
I guess maybe it was he behind like the idea of like the biological imperative that like we fucked so we can reproduce.
I don't know about that. I mean, I know the origin of species. That's and suggested the theory of evolution. That's all I know. But like it was going on before that. He didn't like change the way we looked
Yeah.
at it, but he didn't change the way we like approached life, I don't think. Maybe someone who was you know, alive at the time would be able to elucidate that a little bit better, but like I just don't really understand what the significance of that being Charles Darwin is.
So here's my interpretation, but it's going to require clarification on a line here. When we get to the last refrain, does he say I said God he stole the handle, or does he thank God he stole the handle?
Right. I guess there is. Does it sound like thank God to you when you listen to it?
A little bit, yeah, but then I slowed it down real slow, and then it made things much muddier for me, so
Okay.
I'm uncertain.
Would you like to pause this recording briefly? Not literally, but and then I can grab the CD from my room.
Yeah, that'd be perfect.
and
That
then I
would
can
be
see what
excellent.
it says on this on the actual thing.
Yeah, please.
All right. I'll be back in a minute. Okay, so my version of the album does not have the lyrics in the booklet.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to try one more thing. All right. So, now we're back.
We're back.
That is a
Nothing, there
question I
was-
have had too. Like for
Mhm.
that last refrain, cuz whatever the lyrics is, like you can kind of hear it as like could just be like an exclamation, but like, oh God, he stole the handle. Like not
Mhm.
necessarily God stole the handle, you know?
Yeah.
So
So
I would like to see the liner notes on the album.
I would like
Which
to
I
see
do
that. So
not have access to at the moment.
we're gonna have to kind of work with this a few different ways. So if
Yeah.
we're taking the genius listed lyrics here at face value, I said God, he stole the handle, and taking that to imply that God stole the handle.
Then old Charlie is God because old Charlie stole the handle.
I think it's yeah. I think he's saying here that the concept of this train being out of control goes back much further than what was initially believed. If Charles Darwin is to blame, if we're to take old Charlie to mean which is apparently a reference to Satan as well. If we're taking old Charlie to mean Satan, then that means instead of our demise being in the hands of the devil, he is now attributing it to God. Which, of course, makes more sense if we look at the verse before that, in which he picks up Gideon's Bible.
And he's kind of turned to God, put his life in the hands of God.
Yeah, so I mean, I
Perhaps.
guess let's talk about that because he
Yeah.
picks it up and it's open at page 1. Page 1 of the Bible is Genesis.
Yes.
And this is, of course, playing into the overpopulation reading of it. And Genius does point out this one, the line "Be fruitful and multiply." So it's if we're reading it to this point, being like, "Oh, overpopulation is the problem," and then he picks up Gideon's Bible looking for a solution, and then he flips to page 1, and it turns out God was behind all this shit the whole time. Like the game was
Right.
rigged before it even began, right?
So I'm trying to think of another Genesis connection. And verse 2 has the line, well, his woman and his best friend in bed and having fun.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to think of, like, are the woman and the best friend supposed to be like Adam and Eve? Like, because God created Adam and Eve, right? In
Yeah.
Genesis. And is that like the humor of, like, his best friend is like the guy he created, and then he also created a woman, but now they're together, and like that kind of kicks everything off. I don't know about the crawling
Right.
down the corridor on his hands and knees though.
Yeah. I guess that's if we take the all-time loser to also be God.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, then who's the all-time winner? Is the all-time winner the devil? I mean, there's a
Yeah,
whole thing. And who's
maybe.
catching angel? I mean, maybe we should talk about the lyrics.
Yeah, let's
Maybe we should go
try and
through
go
them,
through
'cause
this
we're jumping
step
around a
by
lot.
step. Okay. We
Verse
jumped around
2.
a lot. We're at verse 2 now because
Yeah.
we've kind of addressed the possible interpretations
I guess
of
here's
who
another
Charlie
thing.
is.
He sees his children jumping off at the stations one by one, his woman and his best friend in bed and having fun. He's crawling down the corridor on his hands and knees, and then we get another refrain. Old Charlie stole the handle, and the train it won't stop going. No way to slow down.
Hey, hey.
So I mean, talking about children of God as like people, that's another thing that happens. As to what it means for them to be jumping off, I mean, in my original thought of it just being about life being out of control generally,
Yeah.
people jumping off the train, I didn't take, I mean, I thought of suicide, but what I thought it was more so was just it feels sometimes like other people aren't in a hectic situation, but it's just your perception.
Right. Okay.
So like
yeah,
it seems like they're figuring everything out.
Yeah, and if everyone is on their own train, right? I
Yeah.
guess these people are getting off. And he's like, well, I'm really stuck to handle this myself. So yeah, that is perhaps one interpretation there. Another is, like you said, suicide or just plain death.
True.
Um,
Yeah.
Or
I mean, jumping
I-
off at a station, like a station's definitely a better place to jump off. But if you're jumping off a train, it's probably still not ideal circumstances.
Mm-hmm. And then if we go with this overpopulation idea, it's easy to sort of picture this train. It's sort of comically filled to the brim with just people, and it's kids just flying off because
True.
there's
Just,
literally no
there's
room
so many
for them.
people. Yeah. So there's a lot of like potent imagery, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And so then
in
that brings
way.
into the idea of like perhaps this man, the all-time loser, is like, well, we've got to slow down on this whole population thing. And then he turns around to see his wife and his best friend who are like, no, we're keeping it going. So like you can't stop it because somebody else will fill in for the reproductive role even if you
Right.
stop.
The loser is the guy who tries to solve the problems. And again, with part of it, I always think of Aqualung as very much a young man's album.
Mm-hmm.
Having been a young man at times in my life, there's definitely like that kind of feeling of like, why isn't anyone else like I'm trying to fix things here, you know? I'm trying to, why is no one listening?
Yeah.
That ties in as well.
Yeah, exactly.
If only
And I
everyone
guess-
cooperated with what I say, then all the problems would be solved.
Mm-hmm. I guess is he maybe on is his because he's running in the first verse, he's crawling in the second verse. Is he trying to get to the front of the train to presumably pull the handle, and he hasn't come to the realization that there is no handle
There is
yet?
no handle? Perhaps. I mean, and then he does, I mean, it doesn't say he's sitting in the third verse, but it does say that he is reading the Bible, and sitting seems to me to be the logical position to be in.
Yeah.
So, like, at that point, he's turned to faith and perhaps given up on solving this problem on his own. Maybe that's another part of
Mhm.
it. Maybe he's suggesting that turning to faith is giving up. I don't know if that's actually
Yeah,
what
well,
he's
that would
saying,
be
but
my interpretation, because this is where we have to understand that it's a narrator taking us through this, right? We're not
right.
hearing the story from the all-time loser or the all-time winner. So if the line is, "I thank God he stole the handle," he may be saying that, like, humanity's willingness to turn to God when things seem feeble. He's like, "Well, good, fuck him anyway. Then I'm glad the handle's gone, because if this is like how frail we are, then fuck it, let the
Yeah,
train run."
keep it going,
Um.
whatever, to destruction.
Mhm.
And that's another thing that, yeah, I have felt at times, It's like, well, no one's going to do anything about it. Maybe everything should just explode in our faces.
Yeah, 100%. You may be right. This may be a young man's album. So let's talk verse 3. He hears the silence howling, catches angels as they fall, and the all-time winner has got him by the balls. He picks up Gideon's Bible, open at page 1. I said God, or I thank God, or oh God, he stole the handle, and the train won't stop going. No way to slow down.
No way to slow down, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm. Silence howling. Regardless of whether this is isolation in the loneliness of your chaotic life, or seeking for somebody else to be panicking like you are about this problem and trying to do something about it, the silence is deafening. He hears the silence howling.
Yeah, the fact that nothing is said is perhaps more potent than anything that would be said.
Mm-hmm. What do you think of catches angels as they fall?
Well, we're definitely working with a lot of like Christian imagery,
Mm-hmm.
or Abrahamic perhaps imagery. So a fallen angel, I think, is like a demon, right?
Right.
So they're literally falling, and he's trying to catch them. Now, who's catching them? What does it mean to
I,
catch an angel?
what does it mean to catch
Is
an
he
angel?
trying
Is
to
he like?
trying to save them? We did talk about him like trying to save people, thinking that maybe he could do something to change things for the better.
Mm-hmm.
But
And like you said, if these are fallen angels,
yeah, they're
they're literally the opposite of helpful at
yeah,
this point. So it's a completely futile action.
yeah. So he doesn't succeed very much.
And then
So
we have the
yeah,
idea of the all-time winner who's got him by the balls.
who
I
again
mean,
might be the devil.
might be the devil, might be God, might be Charles Darwin. No, probably not Charles Darwin.
Yeah. Now I feel I want Charlie to be a reference to something. I do. Um, it's tough though because I don't quite see the Charles Darwin connection, other than I guess overpopulation. Yeah,
Yeah, but does the theory of evolution really play into overpopulation?
I mean the only thing like I don't think the comments said it very well, but just the idea that we know about it now.
Right.
We know about or it's moving away from this idea that like the earth was granted to humanity from a divine source and we can do whatever we want with it, which I think some people believe. I'm
Yeah,
not
I think
totally
that
specific
is.
on that because I mean there's yeah, anyway. Now I was looking up other potential Charles and Charlies and stuff. The only thing I could come up, because it seemed like it would be like a mythological figure,
Right.
Because that's kind of what it sounds like, and that is something. And I can't think of an example, but like giving like a pet name or a diminutive name to like a powerful god or something like that to reference, just to be cheeky. And I couldn't find anything specific, but there is a guy, Charles Perrault, who is credited with being an influential figure in the like literary genre of fairy tales. That's the closest thing I could find.
Okay.
But I still don't really have anything else based on that.
Well, yeah, if we're chucking that around, I mean, fairy tales. It's like, if there's one thing we can agree on, it's Ian Anderson is critical of faith-based religion, or religion in general. I would argue,
Right.
particularly Christianity.
Yeah.
So some
Particularly,
people,
probably the Church of England, specifically, that he grew up
yeah,
around.
So some weirdos will see the song and they say, "Oh, because he picked up the Bible at the end, he is now finding faith. And that's a good thing." When I think for Ian Anderson, it's this is either meant to be the punchline here, him picking up the Bible and then the refrain hitting, or it's meant to be like a criticism of man for turning to God. I don't think it is meant to be celebratory in any way. It's not about finding faith in a
Yeah,
devastating
it's not
situation.
a happy ending.
Hmm.
Um,
But
he,
if old Charlie is Charles Perrault, man of fiction and fairy tales, and then he picks up the Bible, and then we now have Ian Anderson referencing God, I mean, maybe that connection is that he's saying, well, God is fictitious. He's a fairy tale.
yeah, it's a stretch, I'll admit.
A big stretch.
That specific Charles, who old Charlie would be. But I was just trying to find a Charlie or a Charles associated with like mythology.
Mm-hmm.
That was the best I could do.
Yeah, and the other old Charlie that people mention is cocaine is apparently called Charlie. I don't think that's helpful either. Also called Charlie, the Viet Cong.
That's it. It's the 70s. This is an anti-Vietnam anthem.
That's right, baby. No, I don't think that. So, yeah, he's got him by the ball. I think the Gideon's Bible thing has to be the punchline. I think because he says that this song's got a bit of humor in it. So I think it is funny to Ian Anderson to be like, "Oh, you're turning to God," and
Yeah.
that's why I think it might.
He's only
be I
turning
Said
to God because he has nothing. Like, he's clearly done as much as he can. Everything keeps going bad. He's literally
Mhm.
being grabbed by his balls,
Yeah,
as per the previous line. So he says, "Okay, now I'll turn to faith because there's nothing else. I've been broken down."
yeah. And so yeah, he says whether he says I said God, he stole the handle. I thank God he stole the handle. Whatever it is I think meant to be funny and a critique of, if not the situation of overpopulation or life itself, a critique of faith.
Yeah, of something, perhaps very generally, or a combination. Yeah, of several things. Like you said, it kind of ended up being fairly general. And sometimes that's the fun songs where you can read a lot into it, and some of the lines were probably written to mean very specific things, but then some of the lines weren't.
Yeah, some of it's not very very clear. Still like the song a lot.
Yeah.
And I like that there is room for interpretation.
And some really cool, like I said, like Shuffling Madness, very cool. Locomotive Breath, the title of the song, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool set of words they put together there. You know, stuff. Silence Howling, a little more cliched, but sounds cool.
Sounds cool. Yeah, and I think the one that stood out for me on reading through it was "Catch as angels as they fall," a line that would kind of just go by when I was listening to it. But
yeah, I guess like there's also like, isn't there a song about catching a shooting star and putting it in your pocket?
there is a song about that.
Yeah, and you're like making wishes, right? So
Right.
that would probably be a similar imagery. You know, he's trying to make a wish by catching an angel.
Yeah. Worth noting on Gideon's Bible, that's the Gideon, whatever they are, the Gideon Society. They were and are still obsessed with giving people access to Bibles just anywhere they can put a Bible. So they do a lot of motels and stuff like that.
Yeah,
They, of course, have a Bible app now.
they're pretty broad because, like, did they ever come to your school in elementary school? Because they came to my school. They gave me a
They
New
must
Testament.
have. Yeah,
You know
I
those
definitely
little
got a
red ones?
Bible. Yeah, they
Yeah.
definitely came to my school
This
then.
little red New Testament. Obviously, they're active in the UK, and if they're not active in the United States, I would be shocked. And of course, if you open a nightstand at a hotel, they're all over the place.
Yep. So that is, I think, maybe also part of the joke is how commonplace these Gideon's Bibles are, that you can be on a fucking train.
Right,
And
or he
it's
could
like, oh.
literally, yeah, I guess, yeah, they're just everywhere.
They're just everywhere, right?
It's not like an ornate
Mhm.
12th century
Yeah, it's this cheap
Bible. Yeah.
fucking mass-produced Bible. Yeah, so I think that
Mhm.
plays into it as well. But that's the lyrics. They are, in the end, maybe not too clear, but I think we've done our best with them.
But like, I think the themes are the themes come out if you give
Yeah,
it,
I think
if you
a
give it a
general
bit of a
sense of
shake.
it.
Some of the specifics
Yeah.
are a little foggy, but I don't think all of them are super important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know what is super important though? The
Music.
noises and sounds and music, baby. Let's talk about what goes on.
Yeah, let's talk about what happens in the song. Well, first thing that
Starts out,
happens,
hit me with
piano.
it, Alex.
Piano intro. Kind of like
By
a little jazzy, but slow.
Yeah, it's
Song kinda
interesting that it
picks up.
starts out jazzy, and then when the guitar comes in, it really seems to paint it in the blues.
Absolutely. I don't know. I didn't get anything out of that particular transition. Did you?
Nothing meaningful, just
Okay.
sounds neat.
Does sound cool. There's kind of two parts to the intro. Because at first it's that.
Yeah,
Like
big
it's like-
flourishes on the
yeah.
piano.
Jazzy runs. Lots of like runs and cool sounds, and then it kind of gets into the main riff of the song, which gets played on the piano here only, and then also this kind of like pulsing chords, dun 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 dun. And that kind of and then there's the really like bluesy part is the electric guitar plays a lick over top of that, but it's still pretty far in the back.
Yeah.
Or it's more quiet. And then it kind of like fades into this feedback before the whole thing like crashes in. And then you get into the actual like rock version of the riff, which we've already been introduced to in the previous
the
section.
idea of it is in that
Yeah.
solo section.
But now it's been like turned up on the rock scales, and the electric guitar's playing it. And it's pretty simple. It's just the like dun 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 dun.
Yeah, it's insanely simple.
Yeah, and then there's kind of like it breathes for the back half, and you just hear this pulsing of the bass guitar.
Yeah, that boom, 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 and this sort of like choked guitar. This.
Yes, the like muted part.
Mm-hmm.
So it does have that kind of like two halves to it, which is always we've talked about a few songs that have two halves of their riffs, and this is one of them.
Yeah. And
the other
worth
thing
noting
about
Yeah, go
real
ahead.
quick, because I'm still talking about just that melody. It's the guitar playing it, but there's a piano there too, and I believe the bass follows for that part as well. And then the drums kind of follow the rhythm of it, so it's everything kind of combining together to play this one riff.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Because the drums even follow that dun 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 dun. And so it was this sets up this train rhythm, which was very important to the making of this song.
Definitely.
And is part of the reason that this track was primarily compromised of overdubs, which was unusual for the time, 1971, is because Ian Anderson had a hard time, I guess, like explaining that concept to them and getting them to really sync up that rhythm. So it was a lot of separated parts. Also, Ian Anderson does like 6 different instruments in here. He does the flute, he does vocals, he does the bass drum, the hi-hat, acoustic guitar, and some electric guitar.
That's fun. Single drums.
Mm-hmm. And then you have John Evan on the piano parts, Clive Bunker doing the rest of the drums, and Martin Barr doing the rest of the electric guitar. And their bassist, this was his first album he was on.
Supposedly he was
forget
like
his
learning the
name.
bass. Is that Hammond?
Yeah.
Jeffrey Hammond?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. They had to like teach him to play the bass when they were. That's the story I've heard when they were recording this album.
Okay, well, I think he does a pretty good job here.
In a church with Led Zeppelin as they're
In a church
recording
with
their
Led
4th album.
Zeppelin. Yeah. What a time to be alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's your rhythm section, your main riff. That's really the centerpiece of this song. That's why it gets covered a lot. Is that dan 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 dan?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, songs with that sort of solid riff, we tend to see a lot of covers of.
Mm-hmm. So then we get to the vocals come in at a 134, about maybe a few seconds before that. And then what we get with that is a electric guitar that does a lick after every phrase that Ian Anderson sings. And the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath.
It continues that sort of like licking in between lines.
Right, like it did in the intro section.
Which is pretty cool. Feel little.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the like, it's more of like a distorted guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Note on Ian Anderson's vocals. At this point, they kind of changed a lot over the years with Jethro Tull, and
Right.
I don't think he sounds very good live nowadays, personally. But he sounds okay after all the vocal um, production has gone in. But he sounds like his early Jethro Tull sound is like very evocative and has this real like grit to it. Like the fact that
Mm-hmm.
these are the vocals, this is the voice singing these lyrics adds a lot of weight to it, I think, because makes you feel this like grit of whatever it's about. And the other songs in the
Yeah.
album about like teenage prostitutes and homeless pedophiles and what have you.
Yeah, coming into this one as an album cut, and two having just from singles heard other Aqualung songs first. Yeah, it really has that earned grit to it, and it
Yeah.
really is put in that context, and it feels correct
Yeah,
and adds some of that
and
human detail.
there's a lot of like weird vocalizations and ad lib sounds
Mm-hmm.
that I think are pretty unique to Ian Anderson. The way he like does these like small runs, which is like hey hey, like I
Yeah,
didn't even do it very well because it sounds better when he does it. But
it's true, it does. But you know what? You did good enough. Don't beat yourself up.
oh, okay, I'll feel alright about it. And they're fun to imitate, but they don't always sound. This was my prediction that I wrote down that people are going to imitate them in the covers, and they're not always going to sound good.
Yeah, I mean that's almost a given at this point.
Yeah,
We
no,
talked
that's
about
not
a
even
few.
like that's not a Hail Mary pass. That's like
No, you're not calling a home
that's
run
an
with
easy one.
that.
No, no. There's a
But
lot
you are right.
of
Yes.
the refrain. Then we get into the refrain.
Yeah. Tell me
Gets
about that
a lot of
refrain.
ride cymbal right at the start. I and like really like wailing on the guitar, and I think it has kind of a delay effect on it because it sounds like two guitars.
Right.
But only for the first line, and then it kind of goes back to where it was before. So like
Mhm.
it's just for the transition, but then the rest of the refrain is like the rest of the song.
Yeah. So there's like this building in intensity, but then it's like we're still riding that train. We're just riding that train rhythm through.
Yeah.
And then after that, you get a couple of like at the end of the refrain there, you get a couple of on the guitar there, some just like muted strumming kind of thing.
Right. Right.
Yeah, and then I think the next verse is pretty much the same.
Yeah, I think the drums pick up a bit, particularly in the second half. But it's not a lot. I mean, a big part of the song is like it's steady. It's got
Yeah.
it's the train metaphor, the chugga.
Yeah. And since like a lot of the drum playing is just basically fills at the when the riff part kicks in, when it's the ba 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 ba.
Right. So of course
Like-
you'd play more intense fills as the song goes on.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense.
Next big thing I have is the flute solo after the second chorus.
Yep, second chorus or refrain, verse, whatever.
Yeah, refrain.
Thing, section. Yeah, there's a flute solo. Of course, underneath the flute solo is still the same stuff.
Yeah, it's that exact same rhythm section.
And of course, the flute is a big part of Jethro Tull's sound and didn't really catch on as a rock and roll instrument outside of Jethro Tull.
No.
So it really is kind of their. I mean, obviously they have their own sound, but if you hear the flute, you're like, oh, Jethro Tull. Or that one
if you're
song,
ever confused
Focus.
about like who it is.
Focus? I don't remember if it's Focus by Hocus Pocus or Hocus Pocus. I think it's Hocus Pocus by Focus.
Hocus Pocus by Focus. Okay. Interesting. I don't know if I know that one.
Yes.
Just
It also
by
has a
name.
flute in it.
Okay. And speaking of vocalizations, he also is known, or at least I know him for doing his like, I don't know if he just does it in between breaths sometimes or something, but like on this one he goes like, duh!
Oh, right. Yes, he does. It's like gasps. That's like
Yeah.
the like rock and roll flute solo equivalent of just like falling down to your knees and shredding. Or just like he just uses all of his air and just like or does his like "Boo," like sound just to give it
Yeah.
a little bit of character. He's quite an interesting flute player. And at this point he'd only been playing the flute for a couple of years because
Mhm.
he got his flute I think 6 months before the first Jethro Tull album came out, and this is the fourth Jethro Tull album.
Right. And yeah, he plays it in the classical style, right? Where he's on one foot.
Yeah, it's more like a mythological style.
Is it?
I don't know. Is
My
there an actual
God.
classical style of playing the flute on one
There's
foot?
something on the Genius page about it.
Because
They,
like Pan, I think is depicted playing a flute on one foot.
I mean, that sounds pretty classic to me, Alex.
Yes,
Get more
very
classic than
classic.
Pan.
I think so. Yeah.
Oh yeah, on the thing it says known for playing while standing on one foot, a la Pan. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
mythological, not classical.
Um. Yeah, pre-classical, let's say. I don't know.
There you go.
Trying to remember my my eras of
Primordial.
Greek history.
Yeah. So we get that flute solo. It rips. It's good.
Yeah, and then there's like a really buzzy thing that starts to happen near the end.
Yeah.
I don't 100% know what it is.
It is. Yeah, that's about 318. I
Possibly
think a buzzing
guitar.
rhythm comes in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so maybe it's just part of like the effects they put on, but
It
or
almost
like
sounds because it's lined up with the bass notes like 100%. Like if you did like a wet signal and a dry signal separately and ran the bass through like a buzz distortion kind of thing.
yeah, I guess so. Just a whatever. I'm gonna say fuzz box
Yeah,
because
like a fuzz box.
that's a cool sound. Or like I mean we've played together and I've heard sounds like that, but it's just like the window rattling because everything's too loud.
Yeah,
So it could even be that. I don't know.
definitely could. But you're right. It does come in and it sticks around for the rest of the song. I'm pretty sure.
For a while.
Yeah, at least for quite some time.
Yeah, I think it's the rest of the song. Yeah, it is. What else happens? Yeah, there's another verse. I didn't notice differences in this one.
Yeah, aside from the buzzing, about 4 minutes in, the piano starts giving her again on her outro segment.
Yeah, on the outro. The fade out's very long, but it kind of makes sense here that they're not. There's no stop. There's no end. It keeps going.
Yeah,
So you know we don't always like fade outs, but I'm gonna defend this one.
yeah. I think this one is apropos. I think it is a good thing to have. I'm in favor of it.
So
Yeah.
I mean that's the song. It's a pretty solid rock and roll song, in my opinion. It's kind of known for the contrast between the intro and the rest of the song, which is pretty significant. But that definitely gives it a cool sound, and it's a good time. I like it.
It's a good time, yeah. It's I was surprised to find out that this was one of their most popular songs, not because I think it's a bad song, just because again I kind of give Jethro Tull that fringe treatment.
Right.
But it is one of their most popular, and like that riff is easily why, and we're gonna see it repeated
Yeah.
a lot. A lot of hard rock bands, particularly, will glom onto this, as we're about to find out.
Riff's a big part, and it's not too long.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. I mean, it's hard to cover all of "Thick as a Brick," for example.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for a song that has a minute and a half piano intro, like
Right, and if you cut the intro, I had like
yeah, you're
no
in like
time
a
at all.
tight 3 minutes. It's a
Not that I would
yeah,
suggest cutting the intro. We'll get into it.
we'll get into it. And first to get into that is a band called Rabbitt.
In the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath, once the all-time loser and along to his death.
Called
In
Rabbitt.
1975.
Yeah. Did you look up Rabbitt very much?
I did. So, South African rock band formed in 1972. Their most notable member being Trevor Rabin.
I don't know. I was going between those two as well. Yeah,
Okay,
I want to
well,
talk
one of
about
those two.
Trevor Rabin.
Take it away, Alex.
So he later became a member of Yes, the band Yes.
Yes.
In their 80s and 90s era, which is like Owner of a Lonely Heart type era, not Fragile or anything like that. But he also worked on film scores
Yeah.
and that's significant. I'm gonna list a few of the movies he's worked on, because they're quite amusing. Jack Frost, Michael Keaton, Deep Blue Sea, which I forget the
Okay,
specifics of that, but I wrote it down. The Sixth Day, which
Okay.
Arnold Schwarzenegger movie.
Right.
Kangaroo Jack, which doesn't feature a sentient kangaroo as much as you'd think. Bad Boys 2,
Yes.
both National Treasure movies. Snakes on a Plane, Hot Rod, good comedy. I recommend it. I'm a fan.
Oh yeah. Big fan.
Lonely Island, and most importantly, Max.
No.
Yeah,
Max the dog.
Max the dog that we talked about a couple weeks ago on our
On our
Forever Young
Forever Young.
episode.
Yeah.
So he's
Oh
worked
my
on other
God.
movies, but those were the ones I wrote down.
That is incredible. Yeah. Big,
And I don't know if he like wrote the score or was a musical director or what, but he was involved on the film Max. That's important. And he
Yeah.
may have been involved in that one cover of Forever Young in some way. I didn't look
That's
into it too
incredible.
closely.
That's something to think about. I like that we've left it open to interpretation. Also, he's done some production work for artists, which includes the Manfred Mann's Earth Band. That's the only other thing of note he's done.
He seems to. I don't know the other members, but there's also like if you look at their Wikipedia page, there's a different lineup for Locomotive Breath as opposed to their other songs.
That's right. Yeah.
So I don't really know. This band didn't last very long.
They did not. And my understanding was from a random, I think it was a Song Facts comment I read from a guy who claimed to be from whatever town these guys are in South Africa, that this version was very popular there and more popular than the original. Whether that's true or not, I don't
Cool.
know. Felt good to bring it up. Weird thing for me is always when a band is South African and it's just a bunch of white dudes. Like I understand colonialism and all that, but it's still just weird.
Yeah. What's it? There's a famous artist who is South
is it
African.
Die Antwoord?
No.
Antwoord? Well, they're also South African.
And I always forget, and it is
Let me see here. I'm looking at South African musicians.
is it Dave Matthews?
Is Dave Matthews South African?
Someone like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is somebody like
Yeah.
that.
it's
Is it Dave Matthews?
Yeah, Dave
There
Matthews.
you
That's
go.
the one I'm thinking of. Who's like South African guy, and you're like, what? But yeah. South Africa
Yeah.
has a lot of people there. There's a lot of people there.
A lot of people. A lot of people. And it also
Anyway.
has this cover.
It also has
by
this cover.
Rabbitt.
So they also have kind of an intro, but it's a lot shorter, and it's quite different. It's kind of their own riff.
Yeah.
This
It's
version,
much more like joyous, this intro.
yeah, it's kind of upbeat. This version is a little more. It's kind of fused with this like almost late '60s psychedelic thing, and then also this kind of like late '70s or mid '70s hard rock kind of
Yeah.
together. So that's what it feels like to me. Those two things.
Right. So that intro being kind of psychedelic, that bum ba da da da.
Yeah, I guess particularly there's like kind of a harpsichord sound.
Yeah.
Very
And a lot of
bright.
big drums in that part too. It's it's very bright.
Which might
And
actually
then
just be a cymbal, but I don't know. It evokes the harpsichord.
Certainly. And then from there it does, so it's like a big upwards pattern, and then it does some big slow long notes that go down. Dun, 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 which leads us into this more, like you said, mid 70s rock, where it's very fast guitar playing. While this like synthesized something does this dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah, there seems to be some synthesizer going on there. That could be a guitar though. That kind of sounds more like a guitar to me. But there's
With
later
that
on some synth.
ba-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun-dun.
Yeah, fast guitar playing. I don't know.
Or
Could be a
like that rhythm part doing that, like that's for sure guitar.
That's for sure guitar. Yeah.
That other part, I don't know about that, Alex.
Could be strings.
Yeah, I'd believe that. Oh,
Probably.
hearing it
I don't
again
know.
now. It could, you know what? It could be a guitar. I accept your analysis. There.
Anyway, but it's definitely like got this like harsh edge sound to it. There's a lot of brightness. There's a lot of high frequencies in that tone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're taking a big shift in just like a couple of seconds from like big bright Sgt. Pepper's to
yeah.
like I can't even think of a mid-70s rock band.
Yeah,
That would be
it's
hard
more
enough.
like on the obviously this Trevor Rabin guy was later a Yes member. Definitely has kind of that fast arpeggio feeling that you would get from like Yes in particular, but more generally some prog rock stuff.
Yeah, it could be like that. It could be Alan Parsons' project a bit. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it opens with that.
So that's kind of their two sections of the intro because
Mhm.
they also have two intro sections. It's very different, but sort of a similar idea in that we start like it starts as like an upbeat rock song, but it's a lot more lighthearted than it gets later on, and it gets much more hectic as we move into the next section, which is their version of the riff, which is the riff, but it's their sound.
Yeah, it's a little more like compressed sounding than the original.
Yes,
Just
definitely.
overall.
Yeah.
Bass is more prominent. I think it's doing the same thing. That boom, but
yeah,
it
the
is,
pulse. Yeah.
Yeah, higher, more prominent in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
Piano and guitar.
But it's also faster.
Yeah.
So I mentioned it feels hectic, and that's part of it. Speed.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry,
definitely
piano
some
and
speed
guitar.
going on. Piano guitar doing the down. I think it's piano guitar. It might just be
Yes,
guitar.
I think so. At least like their first repetition. It sounds like this very like you said compressed piano sound. So you get this very like high end. And it could be some kind of synthesizer, I don't know. Or like an electric piano cuz you can like with an electric piano, we have like an electric piano sound that we associate with it, but really you could feed that through effects and make it sound pretty different.
Right. The next thing I note from there is the synth that comes in for the refrain.
Yes, these like rising chords on the synthesizer.
Yeah.
Or maybe not chords, but like big synth sound, and then it kind of
like arpeggiates.
Yeah, it almost sounds like they're just playing like a note or a chord or something and just modulating the frequency. Because they could be playing really fast, or they could just be like using the circuit to do it for them. Kind of doing like a sample and hold sort of thing with the frequency, which is definitely possible.
Yeah.
I've done it.
You've done it.
Yeah. So that's kind of what it sounds like to me. And then like cut right down for no, it won't slow down. That's what they say at the end. Won't slow down. And then right back into the verse. Or they do an imitation of the ad-libbing. I'm going to say it sounds pretty good in this version.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this one's pretty all right. Worth mentioning, I forgot to mention it on the first verse, but there is some of that scratchy guitar under the surface of the track.
It's kind of like or is this later on? It's kind of like more rhythmic.
Yeah.
Even. And again, like it's faster because they're speeding it all up.
Mm-hmm. This train is moving quicker, but I think they do still maintain some of that sense of rhythm.
I definitely think they keep the like driving rhythm to it, with just and make it feel like more chaotic.
Yeah. And then of course we do the refrain again. Guitar solo replaces the flute solo.
Yeah, which we're gonna see a few times because most bands don't have a flute.
Don't have a flute
to do the solo. So kind of like a fast mid-70s guitar solo. I liked this solo.
Yeah, I thought it was good. And you got that high synth sort of drone going on while it's going on too.
Yeah, it comes in later on, but yeah, it's very high pitch. And they keep the riff going underneath, as happens in the flute solo in the original.
Yeah.
And then they have a new section. Or I thought it was a
Yeah,
new section.
I think
Yeah,
it's
they
just
do.
that guitar intro, isn't it? That dance, 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 dance.
Oh yeah, I guess it is.
But yeah, brought back again in
Yeah.
a new
I
context.
think it's a little different because, or did we have the riff under it before?
Let me see here.
I don't think so. Yeah, because
No,
now
we
it's
didn't.
combined with the riff.
Yeah, buddy. And then from that section, we move into the final verse.
Yep.
Where
Final
he's
verse.
gone up a bit. He's singing like a different key or
Yeah,
something.
he starts higher. I don't know.
Yeah, and for the first half of the verse, and then he comes back down for like
Yeah.
the second half.
One thing I don't think I mentioned, the they've changed the drums.
Mhm.
So underneath the whole thing is like this rock beat,
Right.
which again makes it feel faster because the drums are playing really fast, but it's also faster because they've made it because they're just playing it faster. So there's a lot of speed in this one.
Yeah.
And then you can really hear like the way the bass is playing in between, like during the lick in this part.
Yeah.
It feels more freeform.
Yeah,
Because like it's playing along with the riff, but it's being like a like it's faster. There's more
Yeah.
notes.
Yeah, it's not just
More
pulsing.
notes.
It's playing more notes, baby.
Yeah.
And of course, as we go to the outro section, we get guitar soloing, him repeating "It won't slow down," and big emphasis on cymbal hits on the drums.
Yes. I think is that like a hi-hat that you close? Like, because it's got this really like rounded like
Yeah. I would believe
sound
that.
to it. So I think that's what's happening. And then of course the guitar does some more like shredding.
Yeah. We fade out on that basically.
Yeah. You know what else this made me think of was like an edgier Moody Blues.
Okay. Yeah. I'd believe that.
like a I don't know, sad blues. Nope, that doesn't work. But yeah, in cool combination of sounds. And I like that they like just added to the hectic nature of it, and just by just being like kind of a rip and rock song.
Yeah, they really leaned into that and just like, well, let's kick up the hectic energy and make this a crazy train. Claw Boys Claw in 1986.
Claw Boys
Alex.
Claw. These guys,
Dutch rock and roll band.
similar kind of to the last one,
Mhm.
Dutch.
Yeah. They lots of critical acclaim, not much commercial success. They took a brief hiatus from 1997 to 2005, but they're still active today, according to Wikipedia. Their lead vocalist, Peter Tebos, is often referred to as a stage beast by the Dutch press.
Stage beast.
So I'm thinking high energy performances. They're very like punk rock, hard rock kind of vibe.
kind of vibe. Some new wave as well.
Sure, I'll accept it.
I think.
Yeah,
If I'm thinking of the right one. Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah, is that because he sounds like a Muppet?
Because he sounds like a Muppet. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Yeah.
Mostly. Because so there's also an intro guitar riff on this one. You kind of get just one guitar that's pretty filtered low for a while, and then it gets all feedbacky, and then they bring the riff in.
Yeah. So we're looking at that was like about 20 seconds to get into the riff.
Yeah, so
it's
a lot
quick
faster
intro.
than the other ones.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of one of the big parts about this song is you get an opportunity to sort of, if you want to, do your own unique intro as,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, put your stamp on it.
Yeah, and that one's good. I thought it was all right.
Yeah, quick,
It's a little quick.
fine little guitar riff.
Mm-hmm.
So, and use the feedback to get into the main section, which is tradition at this point. Although it's only
Mm-hmm.
86, which I guess is
That's
15
right.
years later.
True. Yes.
Uh, this one overall has like this really sort of muted, maybe not muted, but like dull feeling to it. Like when the drums hit, they don't really ring much. It's very like this impact of like
Yeah, they thud.
yeah. And the other, like even the guitar kind of doesn't ring very much when it plays.
No, yeah, it's really more about like punching beats than it is about the noise. Really, it's just about like dun 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 dun
Yeah, they're
dun. It's
really
supposed to
hitting
feel
that
heavy.
kick on
Mm-hmm.
the pulse.
Yeah.
And then that sort of like distorted, muted something to guitar
Yeah, doing that dun 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 dun
playing,
dun 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 dun
yeah,
dun dun.
chords.
Yeah, this one's about texture.
So another thing, that's eighth note guitar part. I one time
Yeah.
heard a thing where someone said like, "Oh man, new wave songs always have this eighth note guitar part." Well, that might be a connection. I would have to look
There you
into
go,
it
Scott.
more.
Okay, so this is the eighth note of new
Um,
wave.
yeah, eighth notes. And then he starts to sing, and he kind of sounds like you said, a Muppet, but like a Muppet version of the B-52s.
Yeah. Oh, the shuffling madness.
Yeah, that sort of sound.
Yeah, the shuffling madness. Yeah, it's a very unique voice. Makes it hard to understand him sometimes.
But we know the lyrics, so
Yeah.
that's kind of the sound that goes through, and they continue with that riff, and like it's mostly standard stuff at this point.
Yeah, we do that feedback where Rabbitt just like cut the music for No Way to Slow Down at the end of the refrain. They do that feedback from the transition from the intro to the riff.
Ah, right. Yeah, the transitions are a little different from that one. Like even just getting into the refrain, it's really just like more strumming, like da 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 da. Like it's not like some of the other ones where
Yeah.
they did strum more, but it's less than that, I guess. Like it feels less substantial.
Yeah.
Because the other ones are like, oh, we're going into a whole new thing, but it doesn't last very long. This one doesn't really have that going on. It's just like we'll do this for a bit and then we'll go back.
Yeah, and they do a thing in the middle of the verse where they'll kind of change the notes on the riff. They'll go dun 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 dun
Yeah, they go up
dun
a bit.
dun dun dun.
Yeah. So like it's the same thing or the same rhythm, just playing around with where you go, I guess.
Yeah, a little variation on it.
And I mean their structure is pretty similar overall. So they have a guitar solo. I decent. I didn't like note the guitar solo too much compared to I think I like the Rabbitt one a little bit better.
Yeah, the Rabbitt one stuck with me. This one I felt pretty basic, but I think they're more about hitting the beats than they are about like wowing us with technical skills.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it's a little more. I mean, they're not like Rabbitt was going all out and really trying to like speed through everything. So it's a little more of that like technical side, technical wanking, we'll call it.
Yeah. Where this
And
one's tonal wanking. It's all about getting some of that feedback in there.
yeah, getting it
and
really
getting that-
fuzzy and buzzy and dull, but not dull as in
Yeah.
boring, just dull as in it doesn't ring out a lot in an
Yeah.
interesting way. They also at the end of the guitar solo it kind of like fades low. The guitar just like and then it goes into that like you just get like that low feedback and then just boom right back into the riff and then in another verse.
Yeah, buddy.
And
Third verse, same as the other ones.
yeah, didn't notice much different. outro, like similar, long fade out, lots of him doing like ad libs and like repeating like lines, and in particular, there's another voice that comes in that says "down"
Down,
as like a
yeah.
backup
And
thing.
we've abandoned the riff at this point. It is just this like low buzzing guitar. It's going like
Yeah, I guess that's part of this like chugging thing.
yeah. Then it fades out, and it was
Yeah,
it's fine.
it's another version. Made me feel new wavy,
Yeah, crunchy, some crunchy new wave.
crunchy.
With that, we're gonna talk about Cat Gang in 1983.
Cat Gang. I thought this
Did you find anything on Cat Gang?
a little bit. They are an Italian disco group.
Yeah.
I found a website with some stuff about them. The only place, because they had a Facebook page, I think. Yeah, they had a Facebook page that led me to this drycastle.com, which is their label, I think, Drycastle Records.
Okay.
So this is like, I think they've done like an album, but they haven't done much else. This is the only thing on Spotify, as far as I can tell. It's 3 to 6 Italian guys. One is mononymous, just named Bozorius. And then there's Sauro Balducci, Mauro Giorgeschi, Silvano Navini, Riccardo Migliorini, Claudio Mattaini.
Those are
The
some
Blues
names.
Collective. Those are Italian names. Yeah, it's it. Am I looking? No, I'm looking at the wrong thing. I'm looking at the
Are
Blues
you looking
Collective.
at
I'm
the
sorry.
Blues Collective?
Let's
Mildenberger.
move that to not there. No, I couldn't find anything about these guys.
Okay, yeah, they're Italian disco according to like a one
I
line.
used
on
to
Wikipedia
have
on the
see, I have them in the
Locomotive
wrong
Breath.
place because I used to have this at the end of the playlist because it said 2017, but it's actually from the 80s. So I got my stuff mixed up. Forget all that. Cut it
I
out.
was going to mention actually that this is 1983. This is 3 years before Claw Boys Claw.
Oh, I put them in the wrong order. Yeah, I put them in the wrong order.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Whoops.
No worries. It's not like these two influenced each other.
Probably not.
Yeah, they have 4 different versions.
But they
of
are
this.
Italian.
They are Italian and they do disco.
And there's 4
So-
versions. This is the short one because I'm lazy.
Yeah, this is the short rock radio version. They have a version called the Cat version, which is sort of more dancey and disco-y. And then there's radio edits of both of these versions. We're talking about the rock radio edit, which starts with a sample of a steam engine starting up.
Yeah, it's sort of at first you're like, oh, it's kind of a breathy sound, and then eventually it becomes apparent that you're listening to something trying to sound like a steam engine. Is it a steam engine recording? Probably.
Yeah, it's pretty I don't know. You'd find it in like a Super Nintendo video game where there was a train starting up.
Lo-fi, as it were.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then of course also feedback fades in, and then they have a riff as well. Their riff. Actually, do we get into the riff already? Yeah, we do.
Yeah, once that guitar rings in, it's this rhythm, this boom da da dum da da dum da da dum.
Yeah, kind of based on this
the
on this
riff.
like triplet.
Yeah, more of a gallop than a.
Yeah, but sort of
a
that
train
similar
rhythm.
like it's not the same rhythm, but it's still like a rhythm that pushes forward. It goes
Yeah,
somewhere.
Definitely a driving rhythm. It's a
Um,
different vehicle.
yeah. And then the riff is a bit adapted. It feels a little more dancey now. Kind of like bam 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 bam.
Yeah, it's slower and built to fit in with that
Yeah.
that bass rhythm.
Yes, and of course this is disco. So it's music for a different purpose from the
Mhm.
original Locomotive Breath, that's for sure. There's
It still keeps the guitar that noodles at the end of phrases though.
Yep, there's a lot more guitar than I would have expected. But I guess I think of dance music in a particular way. But this is disco from the 80s. But it
Yeah.
does. The lick, it felt more separate, like just the way they've done the mixing to me. That's not like a negative thing or anything. It's just how it sounded.
Yeah, it's just an observation. That's fair. I mean, even his vocals, which are just kind of spoken for the most part, are a little distant and separate.
Yeah, true. There's sort of, there is like a separation of sounds. I don't know what that means, but it seems to be here.
Yeah, it seems, I don't know, it is like, there's something about this version that doesn't feel quite so lively.
Yeah, it's definitely slower, and it's been adapted. It's like it's a hit song that was adapted for a different purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it's a song written for like Italy, sung in English. So I don't even know if the lyrics are that important.
Right, I suppose.
Like it just kind of like took that riff and made it dancier. And of course the structure, like we do get a verse section and into the refrain. It's not like some dance versions where they just like take a main line of some sort.
Yeah, this one is absurdly faithful to the point that it has a different flute solo.
That's right. And I wasn't sure if they just got a flute player. I thought it might be a sample at first, but it's clearly not. Also sounds very filtered in the flute. And then you
Yeah.
don't get those gasps for air.
That's
But
right.
it's
so
a
we can
flute
cut
solo.
that stuff out.
And then there's a moment, it's very weird. At like right at the end of the flute solo. It's like 3:30
Mhm.
where everything cuts out but the flute. And then it just kind of plays a bit. It's just this look, and then everything's gone.
Right, well, there's a break in the flute solo, too.
There is. It sounds like it's a different track. Like it sounds like a. Do you mean there's stuff in between the
So-
beginning of the flute solo in there?
Yeah. So
Okay.
at, let me see here. 306, the flute solo ends. And then it starts back up again.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, we just get this kind of like raking, muted guitar strumming.
Yeah, and then a drum roll that takes us back to the flute solo, which then, like you said, at about the 3:30 mark, they pull the other instruments out, and then we're left with just flute.
Yeah,
Which is a choice.
it's a bit awkward at the end, and then it kind of fades, like cuts out on that. Doesn't even really fade out. Like the flute sort of plays.
Yeah, it just like plays a
there's
line,
still
and then
some
there's 4
cymbals.
seconds of dead air.
Yeah. And then the flute like fades a bit, but very fast, and then yeah, like you said, just silence. So it's a bit of a strange ending, but I guess you would probably crossfade it into something else.
Yeah, and this is also a
typically.
radio edit, so the
True.
actual rock version that they made that's on this album is 7 minutes.
And I didn't listen to it, but I assume 4 minutes of that is flute solo.
Yeah. Let me see here. Okay, it's still flute. We're at. Oh no, it's the same ending. It's the
It's the same ending. I guess that's probably why it was such an awkward cut at the end, because they're like, "Shit, we gotta end it." And they just spliced in the ending, even though it didn't quite match.
Yeah, you're right. They probably crossfade to something else. Whatever else Cat Gang did in their obscure
Gang.
career.
Yeah.
Cat Gang.
So like it was definitely an interesting thing to have. But it's like this kind of slower, more plodding version. That's a bit awkward, a bit strange, but
yeah.
interesting.
And it makes me wonder if, because I only listened to bits and pieces of the Cat version, the other sort of mix of this.
Right.
Makes me wonder if that one is a little more of their style, a little more, because there is some more synth in that version. It's a little more dancey.
Right.
So
yeah. Probably.
This might have been them trying to like double dip and get on the rock radio stations as well
yeah.
as
And
do their own thing.
the rock radio was like, "What? Too much synthesizer. Get this off my station." And they were like, "We'll cut it differently slightly." Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
So this may be an inferior version of theirs, but it definitely isn't the best.
Yeah. one of the more interesting dance group covers we've seen, simply because it doesn't do the regular dance things.
Yeah.
But yeah, is it of quality? I'm not sure.
But is it the worst? Let's find out.
Let's find out. W.A.S.P. in
W.A.S.P.
1989, Alex.
In the shuffling madness, the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser headlong to his death.
The American heavy metal band formed in Los Angeles in 1982 and prominent target of the Parents Music Resource Center.
Yeah. This song has an explicit tag on it. I'm pretty sure it's for the whole album.
Yeah, it must be, right?
Because of that, there's nothing explicit in this song, even in their version.
Now, W.A.S.P. fans will note that W.A.S.P. is spelled with periods between every letter. The
forgot to look
lead
up what
singer,
it stood
what's his
for.
name? Blackie Lawless said in many years later that they did the periods simply because, quote, no one else had done it, despite the fact that REM was founded 2 years before them. Had periods in the name.
Well, maybe they should have been more up on music. Popular
Yeah, it's
music.
excusable in 1980, right? What are you gonna
Yeah.
Google it? Like, a lot of theories about what the periods mean. Ultimately, it's meaningless. Some of the more popular theories: white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
Sure.
On the side of their first album, I believe it said "We are sexual perverts." One of the many reasons they were targeted by the Parents Music Resource Center. In an interview, Blackie Lawless cleverly said, "We ain't sure, pal."
That's pretty good.
That's pretty good. So they're a big shock rock group.
Yeah, they
had
kind of
their-
got this like metal thing going on. This is the late '80s. Similar vein to like Motley Crue.
Yeah,
Not
100%.
exactly the same, obviously, but similar idea.
Yeah, it opens with very like big tom drums in a very Motley Crue style.
Yeah, and like some double kicks on the
Lot of double
bass as
kicks.
well. And that's kind of their intro is the drums, and then they bring in the riff.
Yeah, and their rhythm is really just your classic chugging metal guitar rhythm.
Yeah, that's kind of what they've like. I'm sure there's bass there, but really, what you're hearing is the guitar
Yeah,
chugging, and it's sort of like it's the same guitar. It sounds like the same guitar playing.
yeah. So it's just built into the rhythm. They let it.
Yeah,
They insert the riff
yeah,
in.
they just keep that going. It feels like, I mean, obviously I said Motley Crue, so that's not like the most extreme metal, but it's not like some of the more modern extreme metal stuff that gets pretty crazy these days. This was earlier
Yeah.
on. This was like, I guess Metallica existed, but it's not like that.
No, it certainly isn't. And he's got his voice is that sort of like theatric hair metal kind of like zone.
Yeah, a bit of a wail, high.
Yeah.
But I guess it kind of, yeah, I guess theatric, like the way he enunciates things. It's sort of,
Yeah.
let me see if I can find a good example. Like Locomotive Breath, like it's really,
Breath.
yeah, kind of overblown.
Yeah, because
It's
these
fun,
guys had
though.
the full like leather get-ups and stuff.
Yeah.
Like they were part stage performance as much as they were about playing music.
Yeah.
What did I have
He
to
also
say about
says
this one?
there's not a whole lot of difference between the refrain and the chorus, or the verse and the refrain rather.
Yeah.
It kind of like the riff ends, but it just sort of keeps chugging on the guitar. So like that's really the difference. And then he says "won't stop" really weird. She's like,
Yeah.
"Won't stop."
Yeah,
That's fun.
Yeah.
Fun. I didn't
What?
notice a lot of
Stop.
"won't
Yeah,
stop."
he'll s-
Yeah, I didn't notice a whole lot of difference between the verses.
No, it's very steady. Like ultimately, this version falls a little flat for me. I think it's very like they've kind of taken out the unique elements of it, replaced it with more generic metal parts.
Yeah, it
Um,
doesn't. It doesn't like. It feels very straightforward.
Like even when you get to the solo, which on this is obviously a guitar solo,
Mm-hmm.
they do this rhythm section in the back, which is such like textbook metal, like like that could be any fucking song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
It's
the
it's
guitar
just a
solo is like, it's
little
fine. I didn't really note it
mhm.
much.
It's just a little bland, a little generic. This version ends up being.
Yeah. Um, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah. At the end they do again sort of classic metal, like a little riff at the end, and you go, oh, neat. The song's over.
Yeah. Not much else going on with that one.
Yeah, I wasn't impressed with this one. Carrying on that tradition, Styx in 2005.
In the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the all-time loser headlong to his death.
Ah, yes. Styx. I knew this version because this album, Big Bang Theory, I had.
That's right.
So, and we talked about it.
For the Love and
What did we talk
Spoonful.
about?
Summer in
Right,
the
we
City.
talked about it for Summer in the City. So this is 2005. It is post Dennis DeYoung Styx, which I was kind of thinking, like, because we talk a lot about, like, this is a version of this song, and, like, they didn't change it very much, but, you know, they brought it into their sound. But then I was thinking, what is the sound of Styx without Dennis DeYoung? Like, what does Styx sound like?
Yeah.
And at least for this song, the answer is kind of more generic hard rock.
Yeah, I think we talked about this on our Mr. Roboto episode with your brother
It's definitely,
as well. But
yeah, probably come up. This is also a James Young song, which he leans more towards that kind of generic hard rock sound, in my opinion.
Because like, yeah, Styx basically just wanted to be a hard rock band.
Yeah, and then
And
Dennis DeYoung was like, no, you need to put on this mask and you need to act. Also, they're not very good at acting.
Yeah. And the thing is that despite the two groups sort of being at odds, Dennis DeYoung versus Styx the band, that was what made it good. Was
Yeah,
the
you
two
kind
of
of
them
had
together.
having them both, right? So like it can be a bit exhausting to have like constant Dennis DeYoung ballads, but then you throw in like a She Cares or a Great White Hope or something, and it's a little breather in between the more theatrical parts. And you're like, "Oh yeah, this is a rock and roll band."
Yeah.
But when it's just that, it's not very interesting.
Yeah, it's there's nothing interesting about the tones of their instruments on this. I mean, they've even got what's his face Gowan on here,
Yes.
Lawrence Gowan, who from Strange Animal and Criminal Mind.
Yeah,
and
he's
I'm
a
sure
member of the
other
band.
songs.
I was like, they don't do any keys intro at all. They jump straight into the riff, which is strange because they have Lawrence Gowan, but I wonder if they're just sensitive to like giving their keyboardists too much power because it's bitten them in the past. Like, I don't know.
That may be it.
They just
and
still
like
sore.
they're a band they're skilled musicians, right? They know how to play their
They've been playing
instruments.
for
It's 2005
decades,
at this point. Yeah.
But I think
And
it also
no
kind of falls
intro?
apart in the mixing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you don't really get that bass pulse. It's kind of buried, so you don't really get that driving aspect. The other thing that's a bit weird, so the vocals have a lot of echo on them, and the way he sings it feels a little bit laid back. Like he's not. You don't really get that hectic aspect to it.
Yeah,
and
he is taking the piss a
Yeah.
little on this one.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like, I don't know, like I've decided the song should feel. The other weird thing they do is for the guitar solo, Tommy Shaw plays the
Yep.
guitar solo, and we know that because he starts by saying, Tommy freaking Shaw!
Oh, that's what he says, freaking.
I think it's freaking, but it kind of also sounds like reaping. Like, I don't know exactly what he says, but I
I tried to
freaking
look up his
sense.
middle name because I thought it was that. Maybe it's not.
Could be, honestly. But so, and then he like he's like Tommy's hype man throughout this solo. I'm like, it's not that good a solo. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
But it's also weird. It's so weird that this song is about like being out of control and they're acting all confident on it. And like it's got this they've added this swagger to it, which seems to like totally contradict the song.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And he also does like imitates the Ian Anderson vocalizations, and I don't think it sounds very good here. He's not a very good actor, so he doesn't really sell it.
No, it's not great.
We learned he's not
one
a
of-
very good actor way back in Mr. Roboto.
way back. Worth noting on the personnel side of things, this is, according to Wikipedia, the only song that Chuck Panozzo is a part of on this. He plays bass on this track on this album and nothing else.
Is he? I think he's the drummer normally.
Oh, is he the drummer?
So I think he
normally?
just is. I'm not totally sure.
That would make sense rather than
think he-
having the bassist. There's
yeah.
2 Panozzos, isn't there?
Yeah, one died.
Yeah.
One was John, I think, was the bassist.
Yeah, let's see. Drummer John. No, Drummer John.
Never
Best
mind.
known as.
I got to
So
mix
yeah,
that
they got
then.
they
So
got
apparently
Charles
they just
Panozzo.
have some other
Um,
guy.
Because John Panozzo died in 1996.
Okay, got 'em
So,
mixed up.
and for some reason on this album, Chuck
Oh, they're
only
twins.
plays bass on perhaps the easiest bass song.
Yeah, and like you don't even like you should. The bass is important, but they don't like let you hear it.
Yeah, it's not like you said. There's some mixing issues on this as well, and a lot of it just does not sound good.
Wasn't
The one thing they
a fan.
do that's notably
Okay.
different, besides the fact that this version sounds like shit in general, is they harmonize on certain lines, like "In Bed and Having Fun." They get a backup vocal on that.
Yep, get some
and-
Tommy Shaw backup vocals in there.
Yeah. Also, I might be my notes on this aren't great, but it looks like they don't say God stole the handle. Looks like they just say Charlie again.
Now I'm wondering myself because I thought they did, but let me listen for it.
Oh no, they say God. I'm full of shit.
Although it sounds like he says, "But God, he stole the handle." So
Mm.
I don't know, might change a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's a
yeah.
little more piano close to the end, and it gets like some. It's kind of back and forth between the piano and the guitar for licks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. They've turned it into this like rock and roll. We've talked about like kind of the showpiece, not showpiece, but like where you song that exists for soloists. Nah, they haven't really done that. I take that back. Also, the
he
ending doesn't fade
shouts
out.
Charlie stole the handle at the end while they're doing the outro. Because he does this
Oh,
thing
I
where
see.
he does a low part of like, nowhere to slow down. And then it'll go up like, Charlie stole the handle. Yeah,
Just,
because
like, for
again, he's
ad-libbing.
treating this like a hard rock showpiece. Like,
Yeah.
let's have fun. It's time for
Um,
Locomotive Breath. It's Come On, Feel the Noise, but it's
but it's Locomotive Breath.
Locomotive Breath.
Yeah, and they don't fade out. They end definitively, which is also strange. I just feel like they didn't really play the song like in keeping with the themes of the song. I don't know.
Yeah, well, and that seems to be this whole album is them just kind of phoning in some rock songs they liked.
Yeah. I like some of them. Or
I mean, I haven't listened to the whole album. I've listened to Summer in the City and Locomotive Breath.
true. They're not amazing. I like I actually realize now I don't know the original version of A Salty Dog. One of the big reasons I
Okay.
like that is because it contains the line "This seaman's log."
It's a poop.
But I should listen to the original. Maybe it's better. It's also a Lawrence
Why-
Gowan driven one, so
Oh yeah. Well, Lawrence Gowan's tight in my book. Let's talk about an odd act here. Let's talk about Steve Lieberman.
Steve
AKA
Lieberman.
the Gangsta Rabbi. in
Yeah, the way this is
2006.
written, like it's one artist, but because there's a comma, that's how Spotify does multiple artists. So I thought it was Steve Lieberman and the Gangsta Rabbi.
Yeah, I thought it was a team up, and then
it's
you
the
Google
same.
him.
He's the same guy.
Also known as the King of Jewish Punk.
Yeah, he's Jewish, obviously.
He's Jewish. Yes.
And it's considered outsider music. And,
Yeah.
if you listen to it, that makes sense. It's got this like real like backyard grit to it.
Yeah,
Doesn't
he
feel professional.
reminds me of Frank Sidebottom a bit.
Oh wow, we haven't talked about that guy in a long time.
talked about that guy in a long time. I think that's maybe just the way he sings is very much like he's disinterested in the lyrics and is just quite fond of playing with his voice and singing all nasally. Quick jump back to the term outsider music. I don't know if we've ever brought it up on the show before, but it's music created by self-taught or naive musicians. The term is usually applied to musicians from outside the music establishment who exhibit childlike qualities, and especially those who suffer from intellectual disabilities or mental illnesses. Now, the gangster rabbi Steve Lieberman, who is alive, has bipolar disorder. Is that what we call it now? It's not. Yeah, it's bipolar. It's
Yeah, I
not
think
manic
so.
depressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unless
that's-
unless it's that one Jimi Hendrix song.
Yeah. Isn't there also a Rush song, Cinderella Man?
There is. So you talk
A
about
manic depressive, he walks in the rain.
That's true.
Yeah. That's why it always fucks me up, because that's my origin point for hearing that term. And then I just always forget which one is.
Yeah, I don't think it's like, it's just like less correct. Like we changed the name
Yeah.
just because it's not technically depression.
Mm-hmm.
Like both parts of it are as, I don't know. That's my understanding.
Yeah. So this is like you might expect, like you said, kind of what you'd expect from outsider music.
Yeah,
he's got that
real
very...
like grit on this guitar. Very,
Mhm.
I guess, like lo-fi sounding, and then you get the bass pulses and the drums.
Yeah.
Feels gritty. And it's, yeah, I said he's kind of got like a punk drawl. Yeah, and a shuffling madness. Like it's a little slurred, a little, what's the word? Just like rough.
Yeah. It is rough, and yeah, it's an odd one. Very simple composition, because you really just have this distorted guitar and that probably a drum machine or just some drums he's done.
Yeah, and like the other thing about the guitar, very like buzzy.
Yeah, very buzzy.
Yeah. Other like changes, the refrain continues to rise as it plays the chords
Yes.
instead of going down again or repeating the chord loop.
Yeah, and then he also vocally goes up very high for the
That's
chorus.
true. That's true. He follows it.
To the point, I'm not sure if he actually says the lines word for word, but he does end on slow down and comes down on the word down. So
That's kind of fun.
very close if it's not exactly on.
Yeah. Similar for the second verse, does some like vocalizations. Oh, he kind of like vocalizes the riff in between before the second verse.
Oh, does he?
Dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. I'm trying to remember how he says it. He kind of goes da-da-da-da-da. It's like 40 seconds.
Okay.
Just the thing he does.
Oh yeah, you're right. He does.
Yeah. Then there's another verse in there, of course, and then he actually plays the flute solo.
That's right.
So it feels kind of like he's imitating Ian Anderson, but he's not like trying to play the solo or anything. Kind of have like quick passages and like take some dramatic breaths.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know what his flute playing style is. I don't know if it's that he's trying to imitate Ian Anderson or he learned a lot from listening to Jethro Tull and that's what he sounds like. But it does have that aspect to it. It sounds like that's where he learned it.
Yeah.
Or he's trying to imitate it.
And then again, like how much I don't know what his take is, if he's doing this to be funny, like a Frank Sidebottom kind of thing, if this is simply how he does it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think he likes Jethro Tull at the very least.
At the very least. Yeah, so he does that flute solo. The only other thing I have about this one is it ends very abruptly. This song, not the solo.
Right. Trying to, yeah, like there's an outro bit and it just like cuts right out very fast.
Yeah, it goes bam, damn.
And then over. Yeah, the only other note I had was on the picks up Gideon's Bible line. He like says it kind of with the rhythm. Says like picks up Gideon's Bible.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know.
Picks up Gideon's
That
Bible.
stuck with me. I don't know why.
Yeah. Something that stuck with me is that this is from the album Jewish Pirate.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's fun. That's a fun little name.
So it's an interesting version. We've talked about some odd versions, and this is definitely one of those. It doesn't change a whole lot, but it definitely has different sounds going on.
Yeah, definitely a different presentation, despite not
Yeah.
changing a lot.
Roughs it up a bit. And actually the only one who actually includes a flute solo. So
That's right. Alex, the Blues Collective in 2010.
In the shuffling madness of the locomotive breath runs the old-time loser, headlong to his death.
the Blues Collective. Now we're talking about
Now
the
tell me
Blues
what you
Collective.
know.
They're Italian.
Are they actually?
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Well, I mean, you heard me read the names out, right?
I guess, yeah, right. Obviously,
Which
those
I'm not
moves
going to
were
do
for the Cat
again, but it's
Gang.
like they have like an album.
Mhm.
And I found some information about them on the Dry Castle Records website, which is their label, linked from their Facebook page. There's not a ton of info, but they play blues music and they're Italian. And they do Neil Young songs, Jeff Buckley song, Ian Anderson, Frank Zappa, etc.
Okay.
They have Penguin and Bondage on here.
Hey, I know that song.
Yeah.
So this is a blues version of it. We open with harmonica instead of piano.
Yes, this one has an interesting sound.
Possibly 2 harmonicas?
I think it's just a delay.
Okay. Sure. So it opens with that. Possibly some stomping and knee slapping too.
Yeah, see, I see what you mean by the 2 harmonicas, and
Mhm.
I don't know, because sometimes you see someone play and you're like, holy shit, how's that one harmonica? But they're doing it.
They're doing it. And then around 30 seconds, it starts to, when the drums come in, I think the harmonica begins to imitate a steam whistle.
Yes, there's a long tradition of making a harmonica sound like a train, because you do the chugging, the chuk, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then you do the wah, wah, you know? Whistle.
Yeah.
The steam whistle, as you mentioned. But definitely, yeah. Like I did an online video harmonica course, and there was like a whole section on just
Pretending to be a
doing
train.
whistle sounds, and he was like, "This is what this train sounds like. This is what this," and it's like specific train engines
Wow.
that he was imitating, and I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna skip over most of this, but cool."
Did like criminals use that back in the day to pretend they were a train on
Pretend
the
they were a
tracks?
train, scare people, make them run
Like,
away,
we gotta
and
get
then
out of here. A
hopefully
train's
they
coming.
drop their stuff so you can steal it. Yeah. That's how crime used to happen. You just scared people
Okay.
and they would drop their things.
Drop their things. Yeah, it's natural. It's just, here are
But
my
yes.
things.
Then some drums come in,
Mhm.
and they got this like real ballroom blitz type galloping rhythm.
Yeah.
And then right into the verse. No riffs before that. Right into the verse.
Mm-hmm.
About 10 seconds later. The riff is on an acoustic guitar
Yeah.
and some kind of riff playing just at first. And possibly a mandolin, but probably just a higher guitar. I'm not sure.
Right.
And then the pulsing bass. The drums are playing an odd rhythm.
Yeah.
I found the drum part of the rhythm to be a bit weak,
Mm-hmm.
which was fine, but like could have been more of that like pulse. They take a little bit of the focus away from that. And the vocals kind of like low and gruff. And
Yeah,
he's like almost
talking.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. If is the piston something.
He's
Yeah.
he's Italian, so he's got an Italian
Yeah.
accent. Couldn't tell you where in Italy.
Yeah,
But-
I don't know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, way too specific. The drums do change to like more of a 4/4 with some cymbals in it for the refrain.
Yeah.
And then there's some backup vocals in there too. And then big fast hand wah on the harmonica,
Oh, yeah.
which is a good effect. You know, kind of bouncy.
Yeah, and doing that rising action, that's the guitar in the original, right?
Oh, yeah. How about that?
How about that?
Making guitar sounds with a harmonica.
Who'd have thunk it?
Wild. And then, like, They go back, do some more riff, do some more verse, do some more refrain. I kind of stick with it. I didn't notice
Yeah,
much
it's pretty steady.
different. Yeah. But like it is definitely like steady. It feels a little
Mhm.
slower, but they keep it steady compared to some of like for example, Cat Gang felt a little less driving, but this one keeps that up a bit more. I think.
Yeah, it definitely has that driving rhythm sense that's
Yeah.
there, even if it is moving slower.
And even if the drums are a little weak in terms of that pulse, it kind of I
Mhm.
think the bass makes up for it. Not to mention the harmonica, at literally imitating a train. Like I'm surprised we haven't heard
Yeah.
one. Well, I guess there were a lot of covers, and I didn't want to double up.
Right.
I had to cut a Leo version.
Wow.
I know.
Unheard of, Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah. Big thing I've noticed here, we get an acoustic guitar solo, obviously,
Yep.
and then that leads into the harmonica basically doing a verse.
Yeah. Yeah. It seemed like actually, well, at the start of that, a guitar solo, it kind of sounds like it's gonna be a harmonica solo, and then they
Mhm.
kind of like swap out, and the guitar starts playing.
Yeah.
Like it gets to like effects, like oh yeah, harmonica's charging up, and you're like nope, right to the acoustic guitar solo.
Yeah.
But yes, a verse. It does do a verse melody. I think it kind of does a bit of solo-y stuff first, just a little bit. Just a little
It does
bit.
that little like
Mm.
rhythm chug in between
Yeah,
lines.
I guess
It does
that's
that
mostly what it is. And then does a verse melody.
Yeah.
And then it keeps chugging though as we go back into the riff.
Mhm.
And then actually cuts out because there's harmonica licks between the lines on the other verses, but cuts out for the third verse until the very end.
Yeah.
And they also do a definite ending outro, obviously, for a
Yeah.
while, and not very long. It's kind of some backup vocals.
Yeah.
Saying no way to slow down as the harmonica does its kind of wah and chugging thing.
Yeah. And then it comes to that down 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 down.
Very definite ending.
Little wah on that harmonica.
Little
Yeah,
wah
I
on the
thought this was a
harmonica.
pretty charming blues cover overall. I thought it
Yeah,
was good.
I thought it was pretty solid. Maybe a little less flashy than some of the other ones, but I think a big part of it is I think the vocals do a decent job of selling it. They just kind of have that like old person and experienced sound to them, you know?
Yeah, a little bit of cynicism or something,
Yeah.
something a little world weary.
Yeah, and I guess part of that is the blues presentation.
Yeah, and like yeah, just the use of the harmonica was effective. It playing the steam whistle, which like you said is rooted in harmonica usage, and also just hey, it's Locomotive Breath. Here's a steam whistle.
Yeah, it makes sense, right? A song
Yeah.
where the primary metaphor is a train.
Mm-hmm.
Put a harmonica in it. That's the train
Harmonica.
instrument.
It's great. And they held that rhythm. I think holding on to the rhythm and making it work is pretty integral to this song. The two elements really are the riff and that rhythm.
Yeah.
So they got both of those. Good
Yeah.
job.
Good job. And they got some flavor too.
They got some flavor too. Now, Alex, coming into our final verdicts.
So
we
we
got
are.
3 categories today. We got the worst version, we got the best version, and we got the version most beloved by Christians. Yep, that's the category I'm sticking with.
I
most
didn't
beloved by
do
Christians.
there was what's the group?
Apologetics.
There was an apologetics version. I'm pretty sure.
Well, they would have swept that category if they were here, but they're
Um,
not. So,
um,
Alex, what's the worst
Yeah,
version
it's
of
called
this?
Broke a Loaf of Bread.
Ugh.
I didn't listen to it. What's the worst version? Styx.
Yeah, Styx.
Yeah, it's the Styx version. There were a couple versions that were a bit iffy, but theirs were like showed the least sophisticated understanding of the song,
Mm.
in my opinion. And I mean it's even as I mentioned, I had this album. Like I didn't listen to this version of Locomotive Breath. I listened to the Jethro Tull version. You know, wasn't great.
Yeah. No, you're right. It is Styx, and because like that's a group that could turn out something good. I don't like all of Styx's music. I probably don't even like half of Styx's music, but I know they can make good music, and I've heard it, and this is not it. So yeah,
It's
you're right.
rough.
Worst
It's
version.
kind of boring.
Mm-hmm. I'm like, W.A.S.P wasn't great, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
I guess
I don't
I just
expect better from W.A.S.P.
exactly. I don't know W.A.S.P. I know Styx.
Exactly. So yeah, Alex, best version. Tell me what it is.
My favorite version was probably Rabbitt. Had
Rabbitt.
some cool old school but cool combination of sounds.
Yeah.
Had some like pretty fast, impressive playing. Good solo. Really enjoyed the solo, and mostly just and they like added this really like hectic feeling to the song by speeding it up, and not just speeding it up, but definitely that was part of it.
Yeah, I think Rabbitt was mine as well. It was there was some interesting moves. I don't maybe 100% agree with the intro, but it moves pretty quickly from that to something more sensible. So
Right.
I think it's good. It's interesting to see some proto Yes work from Trevor Rabin, and yeah, I think overall good guitar solo in there. Like just good elements. It sounded really good, and it managed to make it more hectic. I think it was a great version. Alex, which one of these is the most beloved by Christians?
Oh, jeez. It's not W.A.S.P.
No.
Tell you that. Even if W.A.S.P. does stand for White Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So, which one do Christians like? I don't know. It's also not Steve Lieberman
Because he's Jewish.
because he's Jewish. It's probably the Blues Collective because it's like some older guys. That's exactly the kind of thing I could. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
it's the Blues
Christians could
Collective.
get behind that.
Yeah, I don't know if they're older, but he sounds kind of older because of the way he sings. You know, because
A
of his
couple
voice.
old Italians, yeah.
The
playing,
older like blues stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think they'd go for it more than they
I
would
think
go
they'd
for
go for it.
Claw Boys Claw, for example.
That's for sure. I think Christian guilt would lead people to really liking the Steve Lieberman version.
Perhaps,
I think
perhaps.
that's what I'm locking in.
Oh,
Is
and
that they're gonna be like, oh,
he has bipolar, so he'd be like, he's so brave.
right. Oh my, it's so brave of him. So yeah, that's my pick for that. If y'all listening have a different opinion, similar opinion, or want to talk about a version we didn't talk about, hit us up on Twitter. #CoverMePod, @JakeTheCressy, @SomeAlexWiseGuy. You can also email us at covermepod@gmail.com. Send us your comments, questions, concerns, suggestions for future episodes. Send us something. Send us anything.
Yeah.
Please. Rate us, review us.
Say
We're on
something.
Spotify,
Say
Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, your favorite podcasting app, your least favorite podcasting app. Just a podcasting app you think is all right. We're on all of them. With that, it's time for a bonus segment in which I ask Alex a question I prepare beforehand. Today's question, Alex, is there any musical artist / group? Is there a group of musicians who you prefer the solo work of one of the musicians in that group to the collective as a whole?
Yes.
And that is
I would probably say, as much as I like the Tragically Hip, I probably prefer solo Gord Downie, at least his first 3 albums to the Tragically Hip. I like them both a lot. But the Tragically Hip doesn't have a Coke Machine Glow. Coke Machine Glow is very interesting and unique, and that pretty much puts it over the top for me. I like the other ones too, but if there's another one, I can't think of it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I came up with this question, mid recording as I always do, and right off the top of my head, I can't think of much. I know Andrew Bird was originally part of Squirrel Nut Zippers. I'm not crazy about Squirrel Nut Zippers, but I love Andrew Bird, so that would be
Right.
an example of that.
And
but
I'm disqualifying anyone who I didn't know about the original band, or like the original band was obscure and then they became popular afterwards.
Right.
Probably I would also say like either Peter Gabriel or Phil Collins, just because I haven't really listened to Genesis.
Yeah, 2 solid picks. I don't listen to much of Genesis aside from like the hits.
Yeah, I'm like, I think a couple of the songs that I think of as Phil Collins songs are technically Genesis songs. But I'm only thinking that because I watched American Psycho last night. He talks about Genesis and Phil Collins
Of course.
briefly. Anyway, yeah, those are the ones that spring to
Yeah.
mind.
There you go. That's all I've got too. Now, if you want to share with us your favorite solo versus group artists, or vice versa, whatever, you think the group's better than the solo artist, you think the solo artist is better than the group, hit us up. Hashtag SoloVGroup, and let us know what you think. That's the end of our bonus segment. That's the end of our episode. And as we always say on Cover Me, it won't stop going. No way to slow down.